We expand on this conversation on the expectations ahead of the latest QLFS numbers with Labour analyst Andrew Levy. Andrew, thank you so much for your time. And as you heard there, because of the public sector wage negotiations and disputes, it brings into focus South Africa's labour landscape and the wage historic matters that have played a role in how South Africa really deals with employment, unemployment and sectorial, the landscape of the sectorial employment numbers in the country. What is expected in this particular QLFS for the third quarter?
Well, I think we've always got to be a little careful of the QLFS because whilst it does provide very, very important and useful data, if we're looking at the overall long-term figures of unemployment, we get an accurate picture. If you're looking at a quarterly change in the figures, what you see is a lot of fluctuation and variation. So, for example, when we get to the figures for the current quarter, we're going to see a pickup in the leisure industry because people are going on holiday. That's a seasonal thing. If we've had a poor harvest in the harvest season agriculturally, we'll see the figures go down because it's a seasonal thing. So the point that I'm making is there are seasonal fluctuations in the quarterly figures which don't necessarily indicate that we've turned a corner. All they are is a seasonal up and down. The important thing is if you look at the overall level of unemployment over the last decade, all it's done is increased. And I see absolutely no reason why this will change in the current LFS. The other figure, which is very important for people to look at, is a figure called the labour market absorption rate. And what that shows you is the number of people who are in or entering the labour market who will find a job.
Yeah.
And now I anticipate that our labour market absorption rate will be probably 40% or maybe even slightly less. What that means is that 60% of the people joining the labour market, and that will include obviously this year's crop of matriculants, school leavers, varsity leavers, etc., 60% of them are not going to find a job. So although there may well be seasonal pickups in retailing and things like that, although you've got to measure that against the depressed economy, the overall picture remains bleak and unchanged.
The latter is a very important one when we speak of youth unemployment in South Africa and the manner in which when we look at the labour force, we also have to look at the skilled nature of what type of employee is being absorbed in South Africa. And the labour-intensive industries like mining, manufacturing, retail is not necessarily one that speaks to a higher level of education in the country. What's to be said about the sustainability there?
Yes, well, you're absolutely right. And, the issue simply is that the more sophisticated the technology, the greater the skill level required. And, of course, the newer technologies are the ones which require these skills. And because there are fewer people employed, that means a higher wage can be paid. And what that means is the people with lower educational abilities who have not the skills to join in become more and more marginalized. On the other hand, what we've also seen in South Africa, and this contributes to the labour market absorption rate, is the export of jobs. This is a tragic set of circumstances, but it's not unique to South Africa. And that just simply means that where the cost of production becomes too high, and one of the major components of that is wages, employers will seek to take their manufacturing elsewhere. And so we have lost, as has America, for example, hundreds of thousands of jobs to China, where there is, for the moment anyway, cheap labor. So certainly the less skilled people in our labor market have got a very, very small chance. And competition for whatever jobs may be going is that much more intense.
There's also a lot to be said about how the state and the private sector in South Africa, sets out the playing field for jobs in the country, given the basis of what you've explained, unskilled, skilled, and the nature at which we have individuals in the country who have the availability to go into the opportunities of preparing themselves to be skilled labor, whereas the economy is absorbing unskilled labor?
Well, I think on the contrary, maybe you've got it switched. We need to absorb less skilled labor because we have a great supply of that. The more skilled you are, the less difficulty you're going to find in finding a job. But given the levels of unemployment that we have, even if you're skilled, it's not particularly easy. So our dilemma at this stage is that we really do have to improve our education, but that is a long-term project that you can't next year turn out completely educated and more skilled youngsters to join the labor market, because education starts when you're 6 years old and continues. So that is a bleak prospect for the moment. You know, the other thing is that we are suffering at many levels a brain drain. Our skilled people who are able to find jobs anywhere in the world are in fact leaving us. And we are going to find ourselves, as and when the economy turns and growth begins once again, we're going to find that one of the biggest limits on our growth is going to be a shortage of skills. But looking at the figures right now, that may be some time away. But what that does mean is that this is the time now to invest in education.
Great insights. Thank you so much for your time, Labour Analyst Andrew